a high attrition rate in rescue swimmer school. So when I went through, it was the Coast Guard and Navy together. Now they're separate. We had a couple of Marine Corps in there. But yeah, it's the physical side of it is pretty ridiculous. You're back when I went through, at least. I know they do things differently. It's still like physically tough. It's just the way they do that is different. We'd be locked out in push-up position forever, and just have just rock hard abs because we're doing so many flutter kicks and sit-ups and then running on the beach. And they're just trashing you in the morning before you even touch the water. And typically after, the morning, doing all the workouts, running, everything else, you go in and do some classroom, advanced first aid and look at the rescue devices, everything else. And then you get in the water, full gear all the time. So that's, harness with, knife flares, just everything. Flotation, not inflated, but, worst case scenario, mask, fin, snorkel, and just swimming, miles of swimming, buddy tows, so there's the physical side of it. But then you get into like life-saving, and now they call it water jiu-jitsu. So things have evolved since I've been in, but a lot of it comes down to the same thing. It's like life-saving. When you jump from a helicopter, middle of the ocean, down pilot, no matter what the situation, people are in shock. They're panicked. Likelihood is they're seeing you as flotation. So they're jumping on you, trying to, take you down. And you're no good to anyone if you're if you're not proficient in the water. So life-saving is the ability to take control of that survivor using pressure points, different maneuvers. When I went through, and they've changed this now, is you took the survivor down. So you take them deep. And typically that induces panic, and they'll try to get away from you, gain control of them. Well, of course, in school, they're locked on. They're never going to let go. So you have to use, perfect, like precision pressure points, and then different moves, breaks and releases to gain control, flip the person around, and then get them to the surface. And of course, they're thrashing, they're spinning on you, and to get them in a rescue strop and hoisted, 70 foot up into a helicopter. So that evolution itself weeds out probably more than any, just because you have to get it so perfect. And if you suck water, you panic, you have like one shot, if you screw it up, then, you might have one more shot and then you get rolled and you're out. So yeah, but it's good. But you're blindfolded half of it, cause you never know when the person's coming. You get hit, you suck water, it doesn't matter. Take them deep, do your maneuvers, get back up, and you're both throwing up water. And
so you guys start surface level then, where it's kind of like, and then you're going down. Yeah. That's wild. And like you said, what was the training leading up to that? Because obviously they don't throw you in right away. Like, do you guys have a few days or like a week to be like, this is how we're going to do this? And, you got one shot, or not one shot, but like, leading up to that, like how do they train you on doing that? Because it's fascinating. I do scuba diving myself, but like I want to get into free diving, and the foundation I'm with, my buddy is trying to get wounded vets into free diving a bit more. And I imagine that would probably help, but like, that takes a long time training, and when you're doing what you guys are doing, like, how do guys develop that even if they're swimming a lot, doing your breath holds or being able to perform, at not say muscle failure, but like muscle failure, and also being under the water and performing everything you need to do. What kind of prep is done before, and do they teach you guys techniques? Is there, before you guys?
Yeah, all of the above. It's a great question. Because just throw you in the water, figure it out.
Yeah,
you might do that just to see how you do, but for the most part, a lot of it starts outside of the pool. So like for life saving, so we're learning all the different techniques. Front head hold release. You go through it on each other over and over, and then you do it in the water with each other, practice, and then you'll be tested on it the next day or whenever. But like, there's so much more to it. So we would do underwater swims, the full length of the pool, come back on the surface, sprint, underwater, just continually do that. Or hold the person's feet in front of you. Now you're one has arms, one has legs. So everything that we're doing, it's about remaining calm. So remaining calm in the chaos. If you don't panic. Panic kills. If you don't panic, you can usually get through anything, and if you have a shallow water blackout or something else, that's a good chance they'll revive you and you get back in, but it shows like you're in it. You're not going to quit. There's no sides of the pool in the middle of the ocean. If you're going to quit in a pool in training, you're definitely going to quit in the middle of the ocean. You cannot replicate an ocean in a pool. They try. They have the wave machines and the sprays and everything else and the noise, but helicopter rotor wash, it's insane. It's like throwing rocks in your face and you're trying to swim towards it with a survivor, attached, and then get him or her hoisted up, in their device. So yeah, one of the evolutions, I don't know if they still do this, but they wrapped us in a parachute with the shroud lines, everything, and they threw us in the pool. They said, get out. And the whole thing is remain calm. All you have to do is wave your hands back and forth because you're pinned to your side. It'll balloon that chute out and you'll start sliding from that chute. But if you start panicking and thrashing, those shroud lines are just going to mummify you. You're going to suck water. You're going to pass out, maybe die. And a dead rescue swimmer is not good for anyone.
This is good. Yeah, exactly. It's not good for anybody. That's wild. So I didn't even think of that. I always just think of like, oh, you're at the pool. They're doing the thrashing. I've seen that kind of training before. But so they have like giant wind machines. You guys are doing like wave machines and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it is chaos, I imagine, because if you're jumping into the ocean, if you're down, down pilot or down the aircraft, that's going to be probably worse conditions. So not just like hey, we're at the pool, doing that type of training. So what other kind of scenario? I mean, that's wild. They just wrap you up and throw you in, but it is a good lesson though. Like you said there, I imagine, did they tell you the technique? They become like, hey, this is what you do. Don't panic and figure it out,
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when I shouldn't say they're telling you the secret, but then kind of telling you like, hey, this is how you pass. Do you still have people that just,
telling someone something and then having them do it.
Yeah. Be like, you will pass, just do this. And everyone's like, oh, looking around like, okay, we got to do that. And then it's still, insane.
There's a high attrition for a reason. So you weed people out. If, and it can be pretty obvious. There's some people that you would think should have made it through. And then, there's some that like, maybe they shouldn't have, but get out to the fleet and they're legit. So, back, I don't know, when I went through, there was definitely some bullying on they just killed a trainee just a few years prior. So that was kind of top of mind, but there was kind of this bullying attitude and they were, trying to, make safety first and everything else. But there was the hazing aspect or whatever. Mm-hmm.
What years was that? I guess we haven't gone over the years like that you went through.
I went through in 93.
93. Okay. So it was the 90s still. So.
Yeah.
But it was the 80s and like, it was the 90s, and like I said, that's still a top of mind. I mean, rescue swimmers, like we were talking about before we started the podcast, getting people's stories out there, how, that community, how prevalent is it, like kind of like the pride of being a rescue swimmer. I've seen The Guardian, with Kevin Costner and
Ashton Kutcher plays your role. You've arrived.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They were Coast Guard, I believe, Coasties or whatever. But within that community, I mean, how it sounds amazing. It sounds super high regard, but it's like something you don't hear, like a profession you don't hear about. When you're going through that, is that something now? It's like, oh yeah, the Navy knows. Hey, these are no shit legit guys, rescue swimmers. Is that like a culture that's pretty well respected, even amongst like everyone knows SEALs, but no one knows.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, it's definitely respected. But yeah, even beyond like the life saving, that's when the training starts getting, more difficult. That's when you start doing multi rescues. So I don't know if you want to go through that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've never even heard of this stuff. So, I mean, this is like, when I talk, I got buddies that are SEALs. They're great. I've had on, I hate to say, I know the Buds pipeline, I've never heard of the rescue swimmer pipeline or what you guys do. Like said, the fact that you even had wind machines and all this, like that's a whole nother element. And I've seen it, in play for like films or whatever. But I mean, to be like, oh, this is our training environment. That's nuts, like especially swimming in the ocean. Been there. I'm a scuba diver, so I've been in some pretty rough situations. But that's scuba diving. At least I got oxygen strapped to my back, Whereas like, no man, you're yeah, exactly, yeah, you're doing it. So yeah, I'd love to go through it. I mean, it's
amazing. So for multis, it's multiple rescues. So in a lot of scenarios, it'd be like maybe a couple in my time, it was like F-14 pilots, F-18. So you'd had to know all of the different gear that they would be ejecting and in the water. A lot of times a parachute ballooned over them, maybe an oxygen mask that didn't, get detached and they're sucking salt water, and maybe someone's in a raft. Always had a free floater who is panicked and trying to take you down. And, one of them might have cardiac arrest. So the first thing we had to do was get up in the helicopter, which was a platform, and training starts at that point. Everything's safety. If you're not putting your gunner's belt on, you're not, doing everything correctly, assessing the situation, you may fail. They'll let you go through the whole evolution and you think you did great. And it's like, oh, by the way, you miss this one thing early on, you fail. You have one more shot. But attention to detail is huge because you'll kill someone. And yeah, super important. At the time, you're just like, come on. But as you get in the fleet and actually, you do some mission sets, you realize how important it is. But yeah, as soon as you crawl to the doorway and your feet are hanging out, your fins, you're seeing the chaos down below. Everyone is screaming. And, as soon as you take the gunner's belt off, get a tap, pop that, 3 taps on the shoulder, look for any debris that you're going to jump into, jump from the helicopter. Underwater, you're clearing your mask as you're looking up and the free floater is coming for you, trying to get you from behind. So you're swimming underwater, get control of him or her, and they're thrashing and, until you can calm them down, try to hoist them, get them in the rescue strop, and they're spinning on you. Now you're doing life-saving techniques. And at the same time, there's a pilot face down in the water. Like, who are you going to save? You can't save them all. So it's that mindset of just assessing the situation, doing what you can, defending the reason that you did it. And most times the pilot is going to have shroud lines just tied in knots. Shroud lines are, as you know, from the parachute, the lines that attach to your harness, to the risers. It'll be like tied in knots around their neck, and they're just, it's a mess. And when you're in water and you're trying to deal with that, it's really tough because you can't see anything. You can't lose grip. You have to be in close in control of the survivor, because if they turn on you, then now it's an active survivor and, puts you both at risk. So I know they've changed it, but we'd have to do a spinal highway, go down their flight suit in the back, put their butt basically on your head. So you're still holding them and you're just reaching down and sweeping their feet, trying to get the lines off. We have J-hook knives where you could cut them, but when you cut one, it becomes 2. So it's like a last resort. And, once they're good, you got all their, all the safety mechanisms in place, oxygen masks off, they're not sucking water. You typically don't start first aid until you get them in the helicopter. But you could give a couple breaths. I mean, everything's at the discretion. Might have to lower a rescue litter and then get them in the litter, which is a lot of work.
So you guys are doing this when you're doing the training. The helicopter is you guys are using legit helicopters, correct? Or is it training or
training? No, it's a tower.
Tower, okay. And then
yeah. But it's blowing down rotor wash, everything else. In real life, yes. Yeah. But the helicopter it'll usually be up about 70, 80 feet in a hover, and it'll back off, give us space to work, because the sound and the rotor wash and the forever tinnitus. What? Yeah. What's that ringing? But yeah, so it's when we finally get the last survivor up, you might go up with them. That's when the moulage, so the advanced first aid, happens. And you'll have sucking chest wounds, they're squirting blood across the way. I remember sticking my knee on someone's femoral and trying to stop the bleeding while I'm doing chest compressions. And then the free floater active survivor is in shock trying to jump out the door. So it's like, what do you, what do you do, right? So you got to stop one to restrain the other. And, in my case, I asked the first crewman, the hoist operator, I'm like, can you help restrain? He's like, no, I'm busy. They're not going to help. So you do what you can, try to close the door, zip tie the guy or whatever, and then get back to saving lives.
That's wild. So do they have, again, well, it's kind of a technical, when it comes to the equipment, like I said, they're splurting blood, all this stuff. So is that Is it not dumb question, but is it like some of them dummies or some of them,
No, it's all real people.
Real people. Okay. Yeah. And then they have like, this is more technical. Like, do they have stuff attached to them then? Cause we've gone through that first aid stuff as well. Where like, they got blood shooting everywhere or whatever.
It's total Hollywood.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool.
Even Tic Tacs spitting them out because might have hit the canopy when you ejected, lost your teeth. Now you're choking on your teeth.
Wow. So they go super in depth into, I imagine a lot of this stuff is like after actions of what have actually happened in the past.
Yeah.
And
or some cool movie they saw.
Or some movie. Yeah. It was 93. It was 1993. So then, even before leading up to that, you're going through this course. Are there stories that stuck out to you that like stuck with you in your training that they did talk about like, hey, this scenario happened. These rescue swimmers performed under these circumstances. Like I go through sniper school, Marine Infantry School. Obviously, we have our legends, from Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, Fallujah. This is what these guys have done. Did you guys? Is there like a story that kind of sticks out, or motivational stuff that like rescue swimmers are have been known for? Like, hey, this is a story that this happened. And you can draw motivation from that or inspiration. Is there anything that kind of stuck out? And no,
I don't remember ever hearing stories. It was horror stories. It was just,
or more horror stories. Even the horror stories was there. Then like, I don't want to be that guy, opposed to like, oh, that was amazing.
Well, it'd be like cause and effect. Like if you just made a mistake, you did this in real life, that person would be dead, and you have to live with that. Can you live with that? We can't. We're not going to pass you. You see people like getting, rolled and DORing left and right. It's more of just the fear. And for me, failing was not an option. And I'm halfway through life-saving, like the evolution that week. So I'd been in school for a couple weeks at this point, rescue swimmer school, and I got news that my grandpa shot himself. So, as you know, military, like physically, you can usually get through anything. Mentally, that'll weed out most people. If you're mentally weak, you can't grow that into a mental toughness, then if you can't do that in training, you're never going to do it, once bullets are flying. But that was really tough because that's my father figure. And I actually tried to, I didn't tell anyone, and I was just not there. And I don't remember, I failed like a written test, like first aid, like the easiest thing ever, how many compressions to whatever. And they took me aside and were yelling at me and what they do and everything. And then I confessed. I'm like, my grandpa, I just found out he shot himself. And they're like, then they really yelled at me. You idiot. Like, because I wasn't, being honest, and that can put a crew at risk as well. So I had to take emergency leave. Went and saw him. He was still alive. He had shot himself, but he survived that. He found out he had cancer. So he didn't live much longer. But in the hospital, the last thing he told me was, he's proud of me, and, just do what you have to do and be the best at what you do. I'll always remember that. And I left. I went back. I got rolled to the next class, right into life-saving. Actually, before I even did that, the instructors, a instructor, I should say, some of the instructors were pretty cool. One in particular, he wanted me out. I don't think he liked me anyways, because, and I was kind of a smart ass anyways and doing cartwheels on the O course. And, but either way, he's just like, mentally, there's no way he can make it through. So I had to go in front of a board and stood there and pleaded my case. And I told them, I remember I told them what my grandpa told me. And they were like, well, we'll give you a shot. And then after that, I've made it through, never failed anything. And so that was big, because mentally I had to, figure it out. But I also realized later, looking back, like that's when I really started compartmentalizing things that were really affecting me, trauma in my life.
Yeah. And I'd say, I've been there too myself. You just have to, this is it. This is what's going on. Move forward, think about it later. It is, when you compartmentalize, it's like survival, but it's also like, like I said, how it is. It's like, hey, don't show weakness in front of the guys. This did happen, but you have to be there for them. It's like everyone's their own stability. Like if that guy's losing it, I might lose it, but I can't lose it so he doesn't lose it. we're still on mission. We still got 3-4 months left in the combat rotation.
Yeah.
You know, we'll deal with this later, or
trauma bonding.
Yeah, exactly. Trauma bonding. And so how much longer then did you have after that when you have to plead your case?
I was halfway, so I had a couple weeks left. Yep. And then as soon as you like pass a couple multis, do a nighttime multi, pass that, and then the next day. Back then they gave us our UDTs, the Daisy Duke shorts. You got your giblets out one side and it's hanging out. And that was like a proud moment, because we were still using like the boot camp shorts. I think they give you like all kinds of cool stuff nowadays, but that was like a big deal. And then we went out and did our first jumps out of an H3 and big helicopter. And